the man in the arena. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Theodore Roosevelt. And with that being read, welcome back to the 127 Fit podcast. I'm so thankful you guys are tuning in and joining us today. I'm excited to have my third guest on the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is Caleb Crump, the Peaceful Warrior. Caleb is a MMA fighter, training and fighting out of Victory MMA and boxing here locally in Colorado Springs, as well as wrestling out of the Olympic Training Center, again, here in Colorado Springs. Caleb, welcome to the 127 Fit podcast. And I just want you, because I'm assuming some of the listeners, not on your end, but on my end, aren't really familiar with MMA and kind of what that is. I know for me, I've seen a little bit of the UFC on TV. Maybe some of the listeners out there on my end have maybe seen UFC, a clip here or there, maybe on YouTube. But if you just kind of, to start things off, to kick things off, want to explain to the listeners more so on my end, kind of what MMA is, that would be awesome.
Absolutely, and thanks for having me on your podcast. It's an honor. So MMA stands for Mixed Martial Arts. It's in a cage, and it's just all martial arts. It originally started, the UFC started 25 years ago in Denver, actually.
Okay.
And they were just trying to see which martial art was like the supreme martial art. Like, I thought karate. Some people, thought jiu-jitsu or wrestling or all these different. And they all came together and they fought and in a tournament. And then since then, people have been fighting. It's been a professional sport, and it's been sanctioned a lot more. And now it's basically it's a cage fight and it's not so much one style versus the other style. MMA fighters kind of learned a blend of styles of striking and grappling, and that's what it is. You can get a knockout, you can win by submission, you can win, which is by the person taps out, or if you put them to sleep, you win. Or if it goes all the rounds, you go to a decision. But it's mixed martial arts. It's a cage fight.
So basically, MMA is a lot of different disciplines combined, and two people walk into a cage, and the last man or the last woman standing is the winner, right?
Yeah, it's like modern day gladiators, basically.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet, awesome. Well, thank you for kind of explaining that a little bit. I know I've never done MMA, and there's probably a handful of listeners out there that, again, have maybe seen a clip here and there, but have never experienced themselves. So definitely, listeners, it's from the little bit that I have seen and followed just through like ESPN or things of that nature. It's definitely, like Caleb said, the modern Spartan, the modern gladiator, and it's survival of the fittest, basically, right? I mean, last man, last woman standing, and
most technical. I mean, you can be super fit, but if you're not technically, capable, then you're gonna get your ass kicked,
your
butt kicked.
Yep. Nope, you're good, man. So let's just kind of dig into some of the questions here. The first question I like to ask my guest Caleb is, how do you start your day? Do you have a morning routine? I know for myself, how I start my day is how I'm going to end my day. So I know that it's very important that we kind of have a focus in the morning. We kind of have a routine or just kind of like a direction that we're gonna go right away. because that really sets the foundation for the rest of the day. So is there like a morning routine or kind of something that you focus on right away when you wake up in the morning?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always just chug water right away when I wake up.
Awesome.
I do like to just kind of like meditate and read, get my mind right, first thing in the morning, pray. And just if there's anything that I didn't clean up from the day before, I try to get everything clean and tidy and just get prepared for practice. I'd like to journal more often. I don't journal every day, but that's definitely something I like to do every day, and I definitely notice benefits when I journal.
Very cool, very cool. I know for me, water is something right away in the morning. It's one of the first things. It's part of my morning routine, is getting some water, and people don't realize when we sleep, our body dehydrates.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand, don't realize that out here in Colorado Springs, we're at elevation, and that dehydrates our body more. So, listeners, if you are thinking about adding something into your morning routine, or you're trying to come up with a morning routine, I would encourage you, whether you're an athlete or not, drink 8 ounces, 6 ounces of water right away in the morning.
I'd say even more than that. I try to drink 32.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Right when I wake up, and I'll make a juice. Like this morning, I made a fresh juice as well, with like ginger and some apple and some usually cucumber and some kale. Just a nice alkaline juice. Get everything going.
I love it. Yeah. So listeners, make sure you get some water in right away. That's a great start, or a great addition to your morning routine. Also, Caleb just talked about having a smoothie. So if you have the time, I would really encourage you getting those fruits and vegetables into our diet is very, very important for the macronutrients, micronutrients, and all of those things. So a smoothie, I know I've done smoothies in the past, and it just really helps things for a lot of us digest faster and get those macronutrients, those micronutrients into the system a little bit quicker. So slamming down some water and some fruits and veggies right away in the morning would be a great addition to that morning routine. So Caleb, is there a book that you like to give other people, or do you have a favorite book, or maybe a recent book that you read that's just been really kind of a game changer for you, or powerful in your life?
It would be so hard to limit this to one book. Okay. I'm a huge bookworm.
I can give you whatever you want.
Some good impactful books that I've read even just this year would be The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Absolutely fantastic book. Just talks about it goes on how compound interest, I don't know if people understand how compound interest works, but after years and years of compound interest, the amount of money you gain is ridiculous. It's very lucrative. And your actions work the same way. If you're consistently chipping away at your craft over time, consistently, it's like a compounding effect. And years down the road, you're going to realize that gain. And it just kind of outlines that in so many different ways, awesome. Like financially, physically, spiritually, everything you do is compounding. So cool. It's just important to be on the right track to bettering yourself every day.
Absolutely.
The Slight Edge was also good. I want to say that book is by Jeff Olson. I'm not 100% sure though, but I know it's called The Slight Edge, which is kind of like a similar idea, just getting that slight edge every day. I don't know if you've heard of, it talks about a story of this guy who said you can either, his dad was dying and they had an inheritance of I forget, $3 million, or he could have a penny every day and it would double every day for a month. And then the person who chose the $3 million had way less than the person who had the penny because it doubled every day. Okay. And it was just talking about how taking the small amount and just growing, and you'll have way more than enough.
Cool.
And it talks about that in every aspect of your life. So that was another great book.
Got one more for me?
1984, always, a great book. I don't know. George Orwell wrote 1984. That one's kind of more almost like political. It's a fiction book, but it talks about a potential future. It was selected for 1984, but it's kind of similar looking like what we're really in today.
Okay.
Where there's like, have you read that book, 1984?
No, I've never even heard of it.
Oh, it's fantastic. I kind of like stopped reading for a while, and then I hurt my back at a wrestling tournament. I had to ice my back, and that was the only reason why I ended up reading this book, because we had to read it for class, and I was like, all right, whatever, I'll read 1984, and I was like, I fell in love with reading again. And it talks about a future where there's basically like government surveils everything. There's cameras everywhere, like they always are watching you. Mm-hmm. Like love is illegal. Everything is like lies. Like the truth is totally distorted, okay. And it's just wild. It just shows kind of a place where we could possibly go.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so it's really eye-opening.
Pretty wild, interesting.
Yeah, and it was written in like the 40s, I want to say, like while ago, and it's still like super eye-opening. He also wrote Animal Farm. I don't know if you've heard of that book. It's another good one. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I'm a big bookworm. I love to read. So.
Me too, man. And all the podcasts I listen to, and just as I continue to do my best to learn, time and time again, one of the things that comes up is successful people are readers.
Yeah, readers are leaders. That's right. A great quote.
I like that quote. That's a good one.
Yeah. I also saw, it says current book. I didn't even mention the current book I'm reading. I'm rereading, actually, The Unbeatable Mind by Mark Divine.
I've read that one.
Oh, yeah, I'm rereading it. It's so good. I liked it. I was like, I'm going to just read it again. That's what I do sometimes. I'll just read books twice in a row if I really like it. I'm like, wow, there was so much good stuff in there.
Yeah, listeners, if you're not familiar with Mark Divine is a retired Navy SEAL commander. He is the founder of SEAL Fit, which you can type all of that information, his name, SEAL Fit, all of that, The Unbeatable Mind, into Google, and Mark's website will pop up. And I have read the Unbeatable Mind book, and I have listened to a lot of podcasts where Mark Divine was being interviewed. And if you are looking for somebody who has had a wide range of life experiences, from my understanding, he went to an Ivy League school. He worked as, I believe, a CPA in New York City, and then just kind of had this kind of revelation where it's like he was just not going in the direction that he felt like he was made to go in, and he joined the United States Navy SEALs, and kind of the rest is history. But just an awesome, powerful testimony story. Mark Divine, he's done some great things for the SEAL community and for veterans. And actually, I think just this past week I listened to a podcast of Mark. And so yeah, just type in Mark Divine, type in SEAL Fit, and just do some reading and research on him and kind of his philosophies. And I know that you will be positively impacted, and you'll be challenged, because his whole thing, SEAL Fit's whole thing, is to really challenge you, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually, the whole body as well. So the whole person. So that's awesome, Caleb. Do you have a favorite quote or mantra, or is there something maybe when you are practicing, training, competing, that maybe is just on repeat in your mind, that kind of helps you to stay focused and continue to have that consistency in your life? Is there anything that you have? Or?
I like Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I also, I guess, like the quote, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. By Wayne Gretzky, and it's just go for it. What's the worst that can happen? You're in the same place you're already in.
Absolutely. Cool. Love it, man. Love it. Now, obviously, we're on a podcast right now. I know for myself, I consider myself a podcast junkie. Do you partake in podcasts? Is there like a favorite one or a couple favorite ones that you really enjoy, or anything like that?
So I am more of a book reader, but I'm starting to listen to more podcasts. I've definitely listened to Joe Rogan's podcast quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Evan Carmichael, I guess, is that's a podcast, or no? Have you heard of it? It's
I've heard the name.
I know he does YouTube. It's like the 10. He'll break it down 10 different like points of each person. I don't know if it's a.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm sure he's got. I'm sure he probably has a podcast.
Well, Tim Ferriss has a good podcast.
Yep. Tim Ferriss, absolutely.
Shoot, who else? Yeah, so I don't listen to too many podcasts.
No, that's cool. Joe Rogan definitely. I mean, with you being an MMA fighter and stuff, Joe Rogan. Most of you out there, I'm sure, have heard of Joe Rogan. If you haven't, he's got one of the longest running podcasts, one of the most popular podcasts literally in the world. But he is correct me if I'm wrong, he's an announcer for the UFC.
Yes,
is that correct?
That's
what
correct.
I thought.
Yep.
That's what I thought. I know and if you tune into his podcast, I've listened to a little bit of Joe Rogan. They're really, really long. Sometimes he goes off. From my perspective, I'm just speaking from my perspective, he kind of goes off on some weird, wacky tangents, so I don't always listen to his stuff, but I know I have listened to a couple of his podcasts, but he also, I think, once a week has, some MMA, UFC fighters on there. And
I agree, he goes on weird tangents, and I don't agree with everything he says,
right,
but he has some really fascinating guests,
yes.
and it's cool to hear what the guests have to say.
Absolutely, yeah, that's the thing about Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss, the two gentlemen you mentioned their podcast, like they have such a reach. They get people on their podcast that the average person just couldn't even touch or even try to reach out to get on their podcast. Their podcasts are, again, they're just world renowned. They're big time, and these guys really can bring some great minds and some interesting people onto their podcast to share their stories and share some of the research and just some of the stuff that they've experienced through their lives. So cool. Now I want to start digging in, Caleb, if you don't mind, a little bit to kind of your background. If you don't mind, just kind of sharing maybe where you were born, kind of where you were raised, and just kind of how your upbringing, your family dynamics kind of shaped you into the young man that you are today. So if you just maybe kind of want to share a little bit about kind of that background history, that backstory, that would be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I was born and raised in Tucson, Arizona. Very hot there.
Yeah.
I have one brother and two sisters. And it was fun. We grew up. I remember playing all the time. Honestly, I was always out riding my bike or my scooter or skateboard or just going to play at the playground behind our house. And I was always very active and into sports. Even before I even got to middle school, I was a state champion in BMX actually.
Oh, cool. Wow.
And that was fun, and I ended up transitioning to wrestling and I did well, in wrestling. I took second in high school in triple overtime, so that was hard.
Wow.
And I think that was a really good thing because I wanted to kind of just win state and then just put wrestling behind me. Mm-hmm. But since I didn't win state, I was like, well, I'm not finished yet. So,
right.
So I went on to wrestle in college.
Cool. Where did you end up going to college?
So my first year, and I went to Northwest Kansas Technical College. It was junior college. We went out there. I won the regional tournament with a broken nose, actually. I broke my nose in the first match. And I won the tournament. Mm-hmm. And then I didn't do good at nationals. I didn't place at nationals. Uh-huh. And I ended up transferring to Rhode Island College, D3 school. And I did well out there. And I won... I won a few awards. I won. I just did good, and I didn't end up going to nationals because of a disagreement with the coach actually.
Okay.
And that was like really that was kind of hard on me for sure.
Right.
And that ended up going through the whole next season. So I stayed out there a whole another season, and the coach wouldn't let me start. So then I transferred to Bacone College in Oklahoma. To finish, and that was even just more adversity because when I got there, I was told I had like all the credits and everything to compete, and then a couple weeks, like a month into school, the coach was like, "Well, you're actually not eligible until you pass like it was something crazy, like 27 credits this semester," and I was like, "Well, I was only enrolled in whatever, like 14 or something," mm-hmm. And so I ended up adding a bunch of online credits, and I made it all happen, and I was still competing on my own though, like I had to travel on my own and stuff. And then the next semester I was able to be on the team and I went out and I went to nationals and I actually wrestled the national champion lost, and I beat one guy, and ended up being an All-American the next year.
Okay.
So that was my junior year, and then between my junior and my senior year, I had my first MMA fight, and I tore my ACL, and I missed my entire senior year of wrestling. It was rough. There was 3 guys that I had beat the previous year that were on the national All-American podium the next year, and I was sitting there like still recovering from my injury. And I was,
right.
Because ACL is one of the longest recovering injuries. So.
Yeah, no, that's no joke.
It was terrible. So then after I graduated, I moved out to here, to Colorado Springs, and to train at the Olympic Training Center and to fight. And it's been going good.
So, do you remember how old you were then when you actually started wrestling? Was that something
12? I was 12 years old, yeah.
Okay.
I'm 26 now, so I've been wrestling for 14 years.
Cool. So, wrestling then, was that kind of something that opened up the door for you then to maybe get kind of a little bit more familiar with the whole MMA thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I always wanted to be a professional athlete. It didn't even matter what I was doing. I just wanted to be the best at.
Right.
Like, I would have kept going with BMX if that had been an option for me, but it wasn't. So I just took wrestling to where I'm at now, and I still have a long ways to go. But it's definitely helped me transition really well into jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Because jiu-jitsu is kind of like mostly on the ground, but the takedown still scores in jiu-jitsu, and the takedown dictates, the position. So I was actually able to win the Blue Belt No-Gi Open Class Worlds this past weekend in Long Beach, and that was my wrestling played a big part in that.
Right.
So
wrestling then is a great foundation for somebody that may be interested in getting into MMA? Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely, dude. One of the best, I think. Because, a good striker, that's good to be able to punch and kick. But what happens if he takes you down and then he's punching you,
Right. Yeah, because I was born and raised in Iowa, and wrestling in Iowa it's no joke. I mean,
it's as big as it is anywhere in the United States.
What's that?
In Iowa, it's about as big as it is anywhere in the United States.
Right, yeah. No, and I wrestled for 1 year, but I was academically ineligible, so I never got into wrestling. But I know that just from growing up in Iowa and things of that nature, it's no joke. It's legit. Like,
it's hard work. Yeah.
is known for their wrestling.
Yes. And
University of Iowa, Iowa State are both from just living in Iowa and everything are two legitimate
powerhouses.
Division I schools for
absolutely,
wrestling.
Absolutely.
So that's cool. That's kind of one thing. I mean, you grow up, you play sports, you just kind of do whatever. But that's one thing. Looking back, I wish I would have got involved in is wrestling, because it's man to man. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's just
you're out there like
mano a mano.
It's a martial art. It's a martial art.
Yeah, and I really think as I've gotten older and listened to some high performing athletes and some of these special forces military people, a lot of them come from a wrestling background. Even some of the top like CrossFit athletes I know, they come from a wrestling background. They really speak very highly of wrestling and how it really taught them that self-discipline and focus and kind of the weight cutting and all of that stuff, just kind of that discipline of like, hey, you've got to be at this weight by this time. If you don't make weight, you're not wrestling. And I wish kind of, now looking back, I wish I would have got involved in wrestling, because I just hear so many men speaking so highly of wrestling. But, it is what it is. But for you listeners out there, if you're a mom or a dad and looking to get your kids maybe involved in a sport, I think Caleb and myself both would highly recommend wrestling. I think there's a lot of things we can learn from all the different sports, but I really feel like wrestling and football for a young boy, a young man, there's just another level of things that we can learn from those two sports specifically. So
If I had to say two, I would say wrestling and jiu-jitsu.
There you go, jiu-jitsu. Okay, yeah. See, now we're getting completely outside of my realm. So jiu-jitsu, I know a podcast that I listen to and somebody that I really enjoy listening to on podcast being interviewed is Jocko Willink.
Yes.
And
yes.
I know he's
a black belt. Yeah.
Yeah, he has Victory. Victory MMA gym. That's the name of his gym out in San Diego, I believe. It's called Victory.
Oh, he
MMA.
owns that gym?
Yeah.
I did not realize that he.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
He's a co-owner of that gym, and I know Jocko is always talking about jiu-jitsu. And if you listen to his podcast, which I would highly recommend you listen to his podcast. They're again very long, very war focused, and it can be maybe hard for some people to listen to, but if you want to just learn things about discipline and just life and the nature of war and that, listen to Jocko's podcast. And if you do listen to his podcast, you're going to hear him and his co-host talk a lot about jiu-jitsu, and I think some of their podcasts are even focused pretty much all on jiu-jitsu, or they have Q&A podcasts, and a lot of the listeners will ask questions about jiu-jitsu. So we've got wrestling, we've got jiu-jitsu, and we've got football. So parents out there, if you're looking to get your kids involved in 3 sports, at least do a little research and digging into those 3 sports, because I feel like you can't go wrong if you have young kids, young men involved in those 3 disciplines and those 3 sports. So very cool. So wrestling is a foundation, a great foundation for MMA, if that's something you're looking to get into.
And for life.
As well. So,
just for life.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. So sounds like you had a pretty solid, pretty decent upbringing, which on some level for all of us, we're all products of our home environment. We're all products of our parents or the adults that were around us when we were growing up. So it sounds like you really had a solid foundation laid for where you're at today through your family.
Yes,
through that upbringing
my parents, very faith-based, and
cool.
We would go to church every Sunday. Mm-hmm. We would pray all the time as a family, so that was cool. Important, and it was cool to see my parents, still together.
Absolutely.
Because that's just not the norm today, unfortunately.
It's not, Caleb, and that's something for me. I'm 31, and my parents are still married and still together and things of that nature, and it is absolutely not the norm anymore. Like, I mean, people are having, kind of kids whenever they want them. It seems like marriage is kind of a thing of the past, and people, if they do get married, they're getting divorced, and it's like, yeah. I've seen it firsthand from kids I was around when I was growing up who had parents get divorced, and how that really impacted, that child or those kids in my grade and some of the grades around me. And I see it now being a school teacher, these kids that are coming from single parent homes or experiencing the divorce and just all of that mess. It really impacts negatively kids when they have to experience that divorce, and they have to witness what mom and dad or the adults in their life are going through. And because a lot of times the negativity that's going on in a relationship through a man and a woman, or that negativity in a marriage, it's gonna negatively impact the child or the children that are in that
100%.
home, because it's toxic. And I've been around enough of that stuff. I've been around enough kids and young people that have gone through divorces. My mom actually was divorced and then remarried my dad, so I have an older half brother, older half sister, and then I have a younger brother. But even my own mom, thankfully I didn't have to experience that. My older half brother and older half sister had to experience that divorce. But even my own mom's been divorced and remarried and things of that nature. And it's just, there's just a lot to that. There's just a lot of negativity. There's a lot of just hate that comes in. There's a lot of just craziness. And unfortunately, a lot of kids have to experience that. And there's a lot of negative ramifications. And it really just breaks my heart. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, it's terrible. It's not God's way.
Right. Absolutely. Yep, that's right. So
the children need the mother and the father. Just
right.
100%.
Well, I'm very glad and thankful, though, that you had a great upbringing. And I think just even blessed. As 2 young men, and just speaking to you listeners out there, if you are in a relationship, if you are engaged, if you are married, life happens. there are no perfect days, there are no perfect people, there are no perfect relationships. And, just kind of going back to a couple of the books that Caleb mentioned earlier, the compound effect and the slight edge, and just talking about that consistency and kind of laying and building a foundation. Like, consistency counts, and nothing is perfect. None of us are perfect. We're all flawed. We're all messed up on some level. We all have struggles. We all have issues. Life is going to happen. There's going to be positive days. There's going to be negative days. There's going to be ups and downs. But don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on, the person or that relationship that you're in right now. Now, if it's a toxic relationship, if it's, if there's abuse and things of that nature, that's a whole different story. We're not talking about that right now. But what I want you listeners to understand is that don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on the other person if you're going kind of through a rough patch. If you're engaged, if you're married, take a step back and do some meditation, do some praying, do some self-reflecting. A lot of times we're blinded to our own pride and our own issues. And, we always want to point the finger at the other person in the relationship, or we want to point the finger at other people. And, it's because of that person or those people. That's why I'm acting this way. No, we have to be responsible for our own thoughts. We have to take responsibility for the words that are coming out of our mouth. We are in control of our life, how we think, how we speak, and how we act. Don't blame somebody else. Don't blame other people. Don't blame your wife or your husband. You look at your life. How can you change? What can you do to become a better individual? How can you love more? How can you serve more? How can you be a brighter light for that person in your life, or those people in your life? Once we start focusing on ourselves and taking care of ourselves and realizing that nobody controls our thoughts or controls the words that come out of our mouth or controls our actions, you will see things begin to change in your life. And I'm sure you absolutely would agree with this, Caleb, right? It begins, Caleb just pointed to his mind. It begins with our mind. It begins with our thoughts. It begins with us taking responsibility for our lives. And once we do that, again, I cannot say it clear enough or speak it loud enough, things will begin to change. You take care of yourself and see the person in your life or the people in your life begin to change. And maybe they won't change, but your perspective of that person or those individuals will change. And I really feel like there will be a lot more positivity coming from that than you blaming somebody else or you blaming other people and you trying to tear people down, because that just doesn't work.
No.
So stick it out. Quit blaming. Quit bringing negativity into the relationship or the relationships. Take responsibility for your life, and just know that nothing is perfect. And if you work on yourself, things will happen. It'll be a domino effect. I guarantee it. So
absolutely, and I think meditation and silence is a big part of reflecting.
Absolutely.
If you're always engaged in noise or anything, if you're always engaged in something, you're not taking any time to reflect. You're not going to reflect. Like, it just doesn't do it on itself.
Absolutely.
You have to be completely silent. Like it says, be still and know that I am God. Be still and you need to take time to reflect. That's where all the positive changes come from. If you can't even look at yourself accurately, you're never going to fix anything.
Awesome. Love it. Couldn't have said it better than myself, Caleb. Thank you for that. So we talked about college a little bit. Now, did you end up graduating from college?
What
did you study? Kind of share a little bit about that.
So I went from business to accounting, and I was good at accounting,
Mm-hmm.
but when I was getting closer to like my senior year, I was like, okay, is this something I'm willing to do for the rest of my life? And I was like, no, panic mode. And I was like, I don't want to get an accounting degree anymore. And I already had so many credits invested towards, I had to go with something in business. I was like, basically I was studying wrestling. That's the only reason I went to college, was to continue wrestling. And I ended up with a business degree.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm 2 classes away from a business management minor, which I'm pretty confident I'll never get that minor, because the two classes I have left, I think, is statistics and accounting 2, and That's just not my jam. So
You can do it though. You can do it. It's not that hard. You just got to be determined. I'll tell you for a fact, I stayed up all night doing accounting homework before, multiple times.
The only class that I dropped in college was
those are two hard. Those are two hard class, statistics and accounting. Once you get past financial accounting, you're good.
Okay.
Did you pass financial? Are you on managerial? Is that what you have?
Yeah, I think it's business.
Managerial accounting is way easier than financial.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I just took the whatever classes I was supposed to take to get that minor 8-9 years ago, whenever it was I was in college and stuff. But statistics was the only class I ever dropped in college, and accounting 1 was brutal enough, and then it was accounting 2. So I didn't graduate with the business management minor. But you're right. You know what? If we set our mind to something, we can do it. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Cool.
But if you deem it, unnecessary, it's unnecessary.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I have a bachelor's degree, and I'll be the first person to tell you how unnecessary it is.
Yeah.
Unless you want to be a doctor, a lawyer,
right.
Whatever. There's certain things you need a degree for,
right.
But it's all about your gift. That's what I'm trying to do, is manifest my gift.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy fighting and grappling, and
absolutely.
And I'm just trying to be the best at what I'm good at, and I think that more people need to do that.
Cool. Now I want to go back. We touched on you started wrestling when you were around 12
middle
years
school,
old.
Yeah.
Middle school, and then so was it in college then that you first kind of got exposed to MMA, and then what was kind of that?
Yeah, good question.
I just kind of want you to expound a little bit where you kind of was it you saw maybe a UFC fight and you're like, I want to do that. Just kind of share with the listeners how the whole MMA thing kind of started.
I guess it's always kind of been in my blood to fight.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I'm not really like a bully type person, but if somebody's gonna fight me, I will fight them.
Right. Yeah.
Hopefully I'll win. So I had been bullied in my past, and I had got beaten up like several times. And then I was like, all right, well, I learned how to fight, and I beat up this individual that was picking on me, and I wasn't even trying to, but he picked another fight with me,
Right.
And it was kind of funny because he had whatever. I had beat him up, and then I was like, okay, but then I was like, well, I like fighting, but for fun, not to try to prove anything.
Right.
We don't need to have any type of ego involved. We can just do it for fun. So me and my one of my friends, we started a fight club. He had a school. He went to a school like 5 minutes down the road.
Now is this in like high school or when?
Yeah, I had been fighting people in middle school and in high school.
Okay.
But in high school, I was like, well, let's do this for fun.
Okay.
So it was like right after Never Back Down came out. Have you seen that movie?
I haven't.
Oh, it's like a modern version of Karate Kid kind of. It's like an MMA version.
All right.
But yeah, so after that movie came out, we're like, well, let's do a fight club. So we would meet at a park, and it ended up being like super popular. Like a bunch of people came, and we had it a couple times, and then the cops had to break it up, and then we kind of went into different areas, and but the whole time I was wrestling, and finally after I graduated high school, I'd gone to an MMA gym a couple times, but I was still focusing on wrestling. I knew I was going to pursue wrestling in college. I went out to Kansas, and there was nothing. I mean, it was a tiny town of like 4,000 people. There was no MMA or anything like that. So I didn't get to experience any of that. And then I went out to Rhode Island the next year to train, and I was able to train MMA, a little bit, not like I'd like to. I didn't have a car, so that definitely sucked. But it was a blessing. And then when I was in Oklahoma, I actually tried to officially start training jiu-jitsu, and the professor was like, no, you're too aggressive, you can't train here. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, he wouldn't let me train there. It was the only place in town, the only place within an hour's drive. And I was like, wow, this sucks. So I actually had to wait. That was in 2014, 15.
Okay.
And then I had to wait till I moved out here in the end of 2016 to start actually training jiu-jitsu.
So from kind of just a little bit of you sharing that, it's only really been over the last couple of years that you've really dived into
jiu-jitsu.
Jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
okay.
I just started training gi jiu-jitsu this year.
Now for the listeners out there, because I've heard like Jocko Willink talk about gi and rash guards and all that. What can you kind of just share a little bit about,
is like
about that type of stuff?
the more traditional uniform. It's like I guess it's like a kind of like a robe, but it's like made out of. It can be made out of whatever, but it's like it's pretty sturdy, and then you have your belt, and you belt up.
Okay, yeah.
So that's called a gi. It's like from judo. If you're familiar with judo, it's similar to a judo gi because jiu-jitsu actually came from judo.
So it's basically kind of like a uniform that you
compete
wear.
in and you practice in.
Okay.
And then no gi is just like the rash guards. Yeah, just.
Now what's a rash guard?
It's just like skin tight clothing, basically. So it's more similar to an MMA fight because. Gi jiu-jitsu, there's several submissions and chokes that you can use the gi to choke them with, whereas in an MMA fight, that's not available.
Okay.
So no gi is more of like for MMA.
Okay, interesting. So jiu-jitsu, the first time you really started to be able to focus on that and start working on that discipline was when you first moved out here to
October 2016.
Okay, so a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Now is jiu-jitsu, so you have your wrestling background and then you've added the jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
Are those two really the foundation, the building blocks to become a better MMA fighter?
Of course, but you need striking,
Okay.
You need Muay Thai. You at least need to threaten with your striking.
Right.
I mean, there's also guys like Ben Askren. He just made it to the UFC, and he's like just so good at wrestling. It doesn't even seem to matter.
Okay.
But yeah, those are definitely my strengths. But I'm just trying to develop all my strengths and just be the best. Get as close to my potential as I can.
Yep. I love it. Cool. Okay, so I want to talk about maybe one person or a couple people that have had a really profound positive impact on your life as a young man. Is there maybe, it could be maybe somebody that, maybe it was a coach, maybe one of your parents, maybe a best friend, maybe it's somebody that you've never even met, but just through reading, through YouTube or some avenue like that, they've really been able to have a positive impact on your life. Is there maybe one person or a couple people, Caleb, that you would like to maybe just share about how they've really kind of shaped your life up to this point?
Probably my middle school wrestling coach,
cool.
Coach Tingatella. He just instilled in me just work hard, like just hard work, goal setting and believing in your goals. And he was my first ever. I was blessed for him to be my first ever wrestling coach, and our team was state champions, and we beat everybody. We were like on a 6-year undefeated dual streak, and it was really cool to be a part of that team and that the whole philosophy behind it, and I've carried it with me and continue to add to that. But that was definitely very beneficial to have him start me in martial arts.
Yeah. Now, is there anybody out of Victory MMA and boxing here in Colorado Springs that you would say has really helped you as a fighter, helped you as a young man, really impacted you?
Yeah, Gilbert Jamal Smith has helped me a lot. He's also came from wrestling and jiu-jitsu, and he's now a black belt. And
is he the owner now of this?
Yeah, he's the owner,
he
actually fought. We fought at this fight at the same weight class, so it's cool to be able to get a ton of work with this guy. And he just, he doesn't let me get away with anything. If I'm sloppy, he's gonna call me out. If if I can be doing better, he's gonna let me know. And it's really cool to have that mentorship in my life, someone that can point me in the right direction and. Just point out my flaws and be like, just be honest with me, and not tell me what I want to hear, but tell me what I need to hear.
Awesome.
And that's really important. Also, Carlos Ibarra, my boxing coach, huge influence. He's just a great coach. He's so committed to the guys, everyone on the team, and it's cool to learn from him. 3-time national champion boxer, so
awesome.
It's cool to have him in my corner.
Absolutely, that's cool. Now, No, go ahead.
I was going to say, just knowing Matt Lindland at the OTC has been really beneficial. I'm just grateful to be able to learn from him and all the guys, Momir and Mohammed at the OTC, like some Olympic champions and world medalists, literally like teaching me technique, and that's incredible, and it's a huge blessing to be here. And I'm very grateful, that Matt Lindland extended that invitation and welcomed me here.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. That's awesome. That's so cool. Now, OTC, that you're referring to the Olympic Training Center,
yes, sir.
correct? Okay,
yes, sir.
Awesome.
Very
good. So, basically, what I'm hearing from you is that you have to make the choices and the decisions each day in regards to what direction you want your life to go, but it's not just a solo thing. I mean, it's a lot of people. There we go, team. Yep.
Huge team effort.
Absolutely. Awesome. Very cool. Now, do you want to maybe just share with the listeners if they are in Colorado Springs or if they're visiting Colorado Springs, if they want to check out Victory MMA and Boxing, where that's located at here?
Yeah, it's on Academy Street between Airport and Pikes Peak.
Perfect.
I don't know the exact number, but you can definitely look it up. Victory MMA has hard boxing.
Okay, cool.
It's the best MMA gym around.
Sweet. Love it. Yeah, I saw through Instagram is there a gentleman that's been training there over the last couple of weeks that's in the UFC?
Yeah, Luis Pena has been out training, preparing for his fight November 10th.
Okay.
I was just grappling with him yesterday, and it's cool to have different UFC fighters come in, and
awesome.
We've seen a good amount. I know last year we had Jorge Masvidal, another UFC fighter, come and train with us, and between here and Denver, we can get all the work we need.
Yeah, because I know, following UFC a little bit through like ESPN and things like that. I mean, there's a handful of UFC fighters that actually either train in Colorado Springs or actually live here, isn't there? I mean, there's
between Colorado Springs and Denver, there's a lot.
Okay,
there's a lot.
Yeah. Now you referred to November 10th. Is that the UFC card that's going on in Denver?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Cowboy
yes, sir.
Cerrone, is he?
Cerrone, Cerrone might have got pulled. I don't know. I know Mike Perry's fighting. It was supposed to be Cerrone Perry. I don't know what happened. The fights, people always.
Yeah, that's what I hear people pulling out all the time. Or they get injured or something comes up.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is kind of crazy.
The fight game. Like I've had just this year probably like four opponent changes for my fights.
Wow.
But you just stay ready.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're gonna be wrapping up here. We've got maybe about 13 minutes. I want to touch on kind of the fitness aspect of MMA, and obviously specifically for you, Caleb. I know I've seen a couple pictures on your Instagram. You running. I'm assuming you're running to the top of the incline here. At Manitou Springs and stuff. So if you want to maybe just share with the listeners. Also, you have it posted right up on your Instagram that you're a vegan.
Yep.
So let's start with your diet and kind of how you got to the point of being a vegan and kind of how that affects positively your fighting, and then let's also touch on kind of your physical training, if that's one session a day, and kind of just give the listeners a little look into your physical training and your diet, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
let's start with just being a vegan. I
started through college. I was always trying to learn, how to give myself every athletic advantage. And I got into different, taking all kinds of supplements and different kind of supplement companies. And basically, I just had a friend that was pointed out that none of that crap, none of it was organic. And I was like, what do you mean organic? And then that was just down the rabbit hole for me. I realized you need to be eating all organic. We should probably be growing our own food realistically. The food system in the United States is so toxic. You're talking about children, the food that we're feeding the kids is totally crap, and that's contributing to all these diseases that we have. The fact that childhood obesity is through the roof, that is ridiculous. There's no excuse for that. That's obviously the food we're feeding them, the habits that we're giving them. It's ridiculous.
Crazy.
Yeah, the healthcare system is not working right now.
Right.
We need to change our diet because we need to understand that our bodies can heal ourselves.
Absolutely.
We just need to give ourselves the right environment, the right nutrients, the right vitamins, the right minerals. And fasting, it talks about fasting in the Bible many times, and I've come to learn that that's a really good tool we have. It's the cheapest. It's cheaper than anything they're going to do at the hospital, and more than likely it'll be more beneficial. It's just something that I would recommend researching, and when you finish your fast, to make sure you just give yourself the most nutrient dense foods. You want to just a juice. Just fresh raw fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, and if just remain on a healthy raw plant-based diet, you can cure like any disease. But if you have a fast and then you go back to eating pizza and hamburgers and greasy donuts or whatever, it's not even going to matter.
Right. So how did you, was it?
Oh yeah, so I started to say, so I was organic. I made my transition to going organic by watching a video called Seeds of Death. It's on YouTube, and that started a whole spiral of research. I actually helped participate in a march against Monsanto in Rhode Island, and I did enough research to learn basically, we should be growing our own food, or at the very minimum, farmers markets are a great resource. We should be using our farmers markets and purchasing everything organic. Our bodies are a temple, and it's important to treat our bodies like that. So then once I learned to eat organic, I've watched other documentaries about our food, like Forks Over Knives and Earthlings and Cowspiracy, and I realized where the animals were coming from, what we were really doing to them, and I was like, wow, and I realized I did more, there's also another documentary called What the Health, and it just talks about, how much antibiotics, how much drugs were actually given to just the animals. Just the animals alone are taking a ridiculous amount of drugs, and then obviously that's going to be, if we're eating those animals, we're eating those drugs. Also, it talks about how even in the United States alone, we grow so much food, we could feed the whole world, but we give it to animals, and then it takes obviously way more crops to feed the animals to then eat the animals.
Right.
So, there's so many ways that being plant-based, can totally heal you. If you're getting all your nutrients, you have to be careful to get all your nutrients. But it can totally heal you. And I just talked to someone last week who had cancer, and they said that they went raw vegan and they completely healed from it. Yep. And it's amazing. That's not an isolated incident.
Right. You
can look online, and there's tons of people that say, I went raw vegan and I'm totally good. I didn't use chemotherapy. And chemotherapy is 96% failure rate. And it's insane that people go through that and a lot of times lose their family. It's really hard. I lost my grandma to cancer. My mom is currently fighting cancer. So I just wanted to learn as much as I can about why this is happening to our society and what we can do about it. Plant-based is huge. I also did some research. I would advise everyone to educate before they vaccinate. I am actually 100% against vaccines. I don't think that health comes from a needle. I think it comes from fruits and vegetables and proper hygiene.
Absolutely, man. I'm right with you. Yeah.
Good. That's amazing, because a lot of people freak out when I say something like that, look at me sideways, and I'm like, okay, I understand that's not what the news tells you.
Right.
But the news is lying.
Right,
it's just
right.
It's the society we live in.
I don't get flu shots. I don't do none of that, and I very rarely ever get sick. It's all about what you put into your body.
How you treat your body, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Fasting is a good thing too. I heard it's like a car wash for your insides. You're just washing yourself out, just drinking tons of water.
So if you're a listener out there, because I know for me, I hear the word or term vegan, and then I hear the word or term vegetarian. What's the difference?
So vegetarian is like a vegan that still holds on to the eggs, the dairy,
So vegetarians will eat some animal products. Vegan
Vegetarians won't eat like a dead animal, like a cow in front of them or whatever,
Okay.
a hamburger, but they might have a veggie burger with cheese on it.
Okay.
Or
Vegan is absolutely
no
animal products.
And I guess I'll have occasional honey, so I guess I'm not super strict vegan. Honey has some medicinal properties, that's why I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But other than that,
I just want for the listener out there, because if some of our listeners aren't familiar with anything health and fitness or diet, and so I know you hear vegan and you hear vegetarian, so I just want to make sure for the listener we were kind of distinguishing those two.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And some great resources would be like the China study. I would recommend everyone look into the China study, which basically is a 20-year study over countries' lifespans and their diets, and it comes to the conclusion that countries with the highest animal consumption also, not a coincidence, have the highest diabetes, obesity, heart attack, cancer, and the countries with the highest plant consumption and the lowest animal consumption have the longest lifespan, lowest diabetes, lowest obesity,
Right.
and it's like, okay guys, how much more information do you need?
Right.
But the China study is a great place to start. Everyone should check that out.
All right, so you heard it from Caleb. If this is piquing your interest a little bit in regards to whether it's vegetarianism or becoming a vegan, he said start doing some research with the China study. And I've also done a little bit of learning and digging into the China study. I myself am not a vegetarian or a vegan, but a lot of times the way that I eat is pretty close to a vegan diet. I don't eat a whole lot of animal products, and it kind of goes back and forth. But just wanting to learn more. I want to, because it's great for me. I want to be able to have a conversation with a vegetarian, a vegan, a carnivore person, or I just want to be able to learn as much as I can about as much as is out there in regards to health, fitness, and just be able to have a sensible conversation with people.
Absolutely.
I think when we get so dogmatic and we're just like, this is the only way, this is it. It's like, hey, let's just all take a step back and let's just have an adult conversation about things, because that's how we learn. That's how I learn when Caleb is sharing, his journey and his story and being an athlete and being a vegan and how he came to that conclusion. It's just like that's how we learn. When we're all kind of like what we're seeing in our country right now is, we have all these people that are so dogmatic, they're so stuck in their ways. Our way is the only way, it's the right way. It's like we're not going to learn. There's no progress that's going to be made. So it's awesome being able to just learn as much as you can about a lot of different things so that you can relate to different people and kind of understand a little bit more where they're coming from. So it's really cool. Now, have you found, and obviously this is probably going to be no, but when you're a high level athlete like you are, and in the type of sport you are, MMA, I mean, it's very physical, it's very demanding. We'll get to your physical training here in a moment, but it's just intense.
Yeah.
Have you found being a vegan? I mean, are there maybe some supplements that you kind of have to add into your diet that maybe a non-athlete wouldn't have to take just to kind of keep that performance high? You want to speak on that, Caleb?
So, if you're a vegan, you should probably make sure you're taking B12.
B12?
B12,
okay.
yeah. And most, I have rice milk, and that's fortified with B12. I also have a B12 thing from Mary Ruth Organics, one of my sponsors.
Okay.
But other than that, you just, let's see, let me try to say this as simply as I can. Obviously, you want your omegas, so hemp seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds are all going to be good.
Right.
Just a bunch of fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds. I mean, it's... I take like a super greens mix. I'll add it to my protein.
Yeah.
I try to have probiotics every day, prebiotics, probiotics.
Mm-hmm.
Things like beans and legumes are all great. I've been blessed to not really have any type of deficiencies or anything. Okay. I've heard of people having problems going vegan. Yeah. I haven't had any health problems, but I did lose some weight, but I don't really consider that a health problem. I feel like I'm leaner and I'm healthier at the weight that I am.
And it's not affecting your fighting, is it?
No, I won a world championship on last Sunday, and I never did that as a meat eater. So.
Right, yeah. So from Caleb's perspective and just his story, his veganism, I think it helped. It's only helped, right?
Yeah, exactly, absolutely.
So that's.
I haven't been sick too since I've been vegan, which has been over 2 years.
Yeah. No, it's great, man. Like, I mean, we just actually finished up. October was Nutrition Month for myself and my students here at my school, and for my foundation in regards to health and fitness, it starts with sleep. It starts with nutrition, movement, aka exercise, and then mindset. That's kind of like those are my personal pillars for the foundation of health and fitness. So, the beginning when we started school, August and September, we talked about sleep and the importance of sleep and just, how powerful sleep can be for us. Yep. And then, last month, we talked about nutrition, and the statement that I continued to share with my students, my physical education students, was, we are what we eat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I tried to really make it clear to them, every single food and liquid that we put into our bodies will affect our brain and our body.
Yep.
Whether that's positively or negatively. Everything that we ingest as a human being is going to have an effect, positively or negatively, on our brain, and positively and negatively on our body. Like, that's just the reality of it. So, I mean, it's just like we are what we eat, and you'll hear some people say, well, that's not true. It's we are what the food, like the animals, which kind of touches on what you said earlier. We are what our animals eat. And that kind of takes it to a whole nother level, that's a very true statement. But just trying to keep things simple with my students, I just said, hey, we are what we eat, because I want them to understand, like, if you eat the pizza, if you're drinking the energy drinks and slamming down the pop and the microwave food and all this processed junk, like, that's going to negatively affect your brain. It's going to negatively affect your body. You will not reach your full potential as a human being.
Facts.
And then it's a reverse if you take care of your body through what you eat. If you eat clean food, if you eat the organic, if you drink water and avoid all that junk food, that's going to positively affect your brain. It's going to positively affect your body, and you will be on the right path to reach your full potential as a human being.
Absolutely.
So it's all about what you put into your body, and so
it's more than just what you eat. It's what you listen to, and
absolutely.
It's what you see.
Oh yeah,
it's
goes,
everything.
It goes beyond that, but just for the sake of my students.
Yeah, no, just for nutrition.
Simple,
absolutely,
like nutrition, it's like, hey, kids, like, everything you put into your mouth and you ingest is going to have an effect on your brain and your body. Yep. So if you want to be the best student you can be, if you want to be the best individual, the best, son or daughter, best athlete, whatever, if you want to reach your full potential, you need to pay attention to that food and what you're putting into your body. So
absolutely,
it's awesome to just be able to hear your story and your perspective of how you've changed your diet, and that's only positively affected you on your journey in reaching your full potential as Caleb, as a man, but then also as an MMA fighter. So
yes.
Listeners, watch what you eat. Take that into consideration. So we are almost done here, Caleb. Let's see. Now, really quickly, before we kind of wrap things up, I want to touch on your physical training. Mm-hmm. What is let's just say if you're not in like a fight camp and preparing for a match or something, what is just kind of like a normal training cycle for you, Caleb, as an MMA fighter?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm trying to actually redefine normal, because for me, normal for a while has just been train.
Okay.
But I'm learning the value of rest.
Absolutely.
And it's hard for someone like me that I just always want to work, but I know that resting will make me better, and it'll make my work more efficient. And I know that's even a biblical principle. Take one day, and rest that whole day, and that's something that I'm working at getting better at. And actually, it was crazy. Before, to even more of a testament to that, before the World Championships, I got a skin infection, and I was not able to train on the mats for the whole month before the tournament. And all I was doing was running and push-ups, and I was like, man, I haven't trained forever, but I feel really fresh, and I really am excited for this tournament. And I went out there and did great, and I was like, wow, maybe I've been overtraining for a while now.
so that forced rest
was really good for me.
Was really good for you,
yeah.
And that kind of just validated the fact that
rest is important.
As athletes, we need that rest, we need that recovery for you, right?
Yep. It's because I would love to work out, 4 times a day, 7 days a week, but I can't do that, and I'm learning more of. I might even be better off with just twice a day, 6 days a week. That might be the recipe. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, the training it varies from. I love to go to the Olympic Training Center and get some Greco-Roman wrestling in, or a lift there, and then or go to Victory MMA, get some boxing in, or some jiu-jitsu, some Muay Thai. I love flow sparring, which is like a more technical spar where we're not punching very hard or kicking very hard, just working on our techniques.
Cool. So do you do any type of like strength training? Is there squats and things of that nature? So
I at the OTC I would do some weights for sure, like deadlifts, power cleans, and squat and bench and some auxiliary movements. But lately I've just been doing more body weight, just push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, because we can do a whole lot in one day and completely recover the next day, but if I go to the gym and put on a ton of weight and I'm super sore, then I just set myself back 3 days.
There you go, yeah.
So I'm really getting more into body weight, doing the handstand push-ups and just trying to get as strong as I can without tearing myself down too much.
Right, cool. And so is the incline?
I love the incline.
Is that kind of a regular thing?
I wish it was more regular. It is. I've been up there a lot, but I'd like it to be closer to once a week, but it's more like once every month.
Okay, cool. I people have told me that I need to get up there. I haven't done it yet.
Oh yeah, you got to, man.
And I see
the view from the top is amazing.
Is it? I got to get up there. And I see some of the UFC fighters here that live in Colorado Springs. I know there's a couple ladies that I follow.
Tisha and Raquel.
Yeah, I see them posting probably once a month or a couple times a month. They're being at the top of the incline.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's good for just.
It's
that
a great
cardiovascular
challenge, and to get up that much, you go up 3,000 more feet in elevation.
Wow.
So it's good. It's definitely good.
All right. Well, I know you need to get going here, Caleb. So I just want to wrap things up. First of all, I want to thank you very much for sharing your story, giving us a little insight into an MMA fighter. It's greatly appreciated, and I know that the listeners will really appreciate this interview. So, listeners, I just want to again thank you for tuning in today. And I hope that you are able to take something or a couple things, which I know you will be able to, away from our time together and this conversation with Caleb. I just want you guys to continue to give me some feedback if there's something that you would like me to do different on the podcast, or if there's maybe a guest or a question or something that you would like me to include when I have these conversations and interviews with my guests. Please feel free just to reach out to me. You can reach out to me on Facebook. It's Quentin Vars. Instagram at 127fitness. My blog site, my website is 127fitness.com. And then you can listen to the podcast on the platform called Podbean. I will also be posting this podcast episode on my Facebook page, which again is Quentin Vars. So, Caleb, quickly, if you want to give the listeners kind of where, just let the listeners know where they can reach you, and then shout out any sponsors that you currently have.
Thank you, Quentin. Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at thepeacefulwarrior92, or just Facebook, Caleb Crump. And I'd like to thank my sponsors, Discover CBD, Whole Body Apothecary, Mary Ruth Organics, and 7 Moons Massage Therapy, and Vig Animal Apparel. I'm very grateful for all my sponsors, and they've helped me a lot.
Cool. And shout out to Victory, MMA, and
Hustle Hard Boxing.
Hustle Hard Boxing. It sounds like they have a great community, a great family there.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of positive things coming out of that gym here in Colorado Springs. So if you ever come to Colorado Springs, you're an MMA fighter or boxer or anything of that nature, I would Google that gym and hit those guys up, and I'm sure they would be more than welcome to have somebody stop in and hang out with them, and I'm sure you'll learn a lot. So once again, Caleb, thank you very much. Listeners, thank you again for tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Just stay positive, stay focused, stay disciplined. Remember that consistency counts, and I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10. If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. Have a great rest of your day.